Guides can help you increase your productivity when placing text, graphics, or images. It can also become an organizing element as you define your visual language or theme, and as such, it can be an aid in creating your own visual brand. The Renaissance architect Leon Battista Alberti called these lineaments an underlying organization that defines the unity of the elements. The example here is a regular Cartesian grid. The placed elements follow their own rule. In size and proportion, but are organized by the grid structure. So these visual ideas of alignment, rhythm, repetition, and association with the underlying grid create a form of unity, and it is assisted by the underlying structure of the grid. Similarly, multiple, otherwise independent and distinct compositions have a visual unity even when the grid is turned off. Now, guides can be placed on any page or on a master page or any master page. It can also be placed on any layer, and these layers can be locked or made visible. Let's look at how we can place individual guides first. To place individual guides, we need to see the rulers. And you can activate the rulers, of course. You go to View, Show Rulers. You can drag guides from either the top ruler bar or the vertical ruler bar. And you can drag as many guides as you want. Guides can be selected. They can be moved once they're selected. They can also be deleted by, after selecting, you hit the delete button. You can also accurately place guides by navigating to the control bar, which can be activated when you go to Window, select Control, and X or Y coordinates show up respectively. So you can type in the coordinate, hit return. Now this horizontal ruler guide is positioned exactly at 1 inch. Let's place this at 2 inches. That's correct. You can also make copies of guides by holding down the Alt key. I place this one at 3 inches. Again, guides can be placed on any layer. I recommend that you create a new layer for the guides. And by placing these objects on this layer, you see that you can hide the content. And you can also lock these layers so they don't get selected and they're protected. Now, another reason why it might be worth placing them in a separate layer and is that we know that W toggles between displaying frames, displaying guides, and displaying and hiding clipboard. So this way, when you hit the W, all of these get hidden. But sometimes it's possible that you want to see your clipboard, you want to see the frames, but you don't want to necessarily see the guides. So that's when this might be actually useful operation. You can also create a structured Cartesian grid in InDesign. And for this exercise, we're actually going to go to the master and place it on the master. And of course, as you know, anything that's placed on the master will also appear on the pages that the master is assigned to. In this case, these 2 pages. To create a grid, we need to navigate to the menu bar, navigate to layout, and select create guides. Now, when you select this, a dialog box appears. It shows us how many rows of guides we want, how many columns of guides, and what is the space for the vertical and the horizontal guides between those guides. That's called a gutter. And we can also select it relative to place relative to the margins or relative to the page. Again, if you have a margin and you want to define the grid inside those margin lines, select the first one. If you don't have margins, for example, you have bleed, you want to define it relative to the edge of the page, select the other one. Then in this case, the gutters are defined by inches, which is a little difficult to see exactly, control the spacing. So I will go and change the units. So I cancel this, navigate to the intersection of the 2 ruler bars, right click and select points. This gives a more refined control of these distances. So let's make the rows, in this case, I just use maybe 16 rows, 24 columns, maybe 6 point. Of course, it's a very fine grid. Okay. And say okay. Now, because this was placed on the master, it will actually show up on these pages. To place content, and you want to control and take advantage of snapping to these points, you can navigate to view, grids and guides, and turn on snap to guides. So now you select maybe a frame. I select image frame. I create one frame. Make a copy. As I'm doing this, where I navigate through this, the points, snap to that point, snap to grid points. You select images. You can place these images. Similarly, you can place text frame. And you can place the text. Again, W hides these, but if you place this on a grid layer, which it is, I go back to this operation, I can hide the grid. Of course, in this case, you have to be careful that these are in the proper layer, so this should probably go to maybe like a graphics layer. This goes to the text layer. And finally, there's one more way of placing grids, and that's an internal grid that's available in InDesign. So for that one, let's create a new layer. Let's look at how it works. Navigate to View, Grids and Guides, and you select Document Grid, and this document grid is placed. Okay, this is called Document Grid. Now for Document Grid, again, The snap is still turned on. The setting can be changed in preferences. If you navigate to preferences and select grids, you can set the grid every 72 points, which is 1 inch, 8 divisions, and you can change that. One disadvantage of this one is that every time you don't want to see this grid, you have to navigate to view and hide document grid. Again, there's a keyboard shortcut if you want to use that. And the other disadvantage is maybe the spacing is not as clearly defined as in this case, the gutter, as you have it here. So enjoy this tip. Enjoy using grids and layouts and layout guides, and think about how this can be part of how you define your visual language.